Hello everyone, Pulse here, and welcome to yet another episode of Delving Deep ESO. Now in today's episode, we're going to continue our discussion about the skill lines that will be available in Elder Scrolls Online, and now that we've already covered the class-specific skill lines, and all of the weapons also, we're going to focus on the armors in this episode. Now the armor skill lines work a little bit differently. They're fairly cool and different from the previously talked about skill lines, but we'll get into why they're different here in just a minute. Before we discuss all of this stuff that we're really wanting to talk about, I need to remind everyone, first off, that this isn't confirmed information from Zenimax. Instead, it's a comprehensive collective of information that's come from numerous beta testers and people that have the in guy or the mole or whatever, and the evidence really at this point is pointing towards this information we've been going over for a while now. This seems to be correct, right? This seems to be what we're going to be getting, at least in a base form. Like, obviously there's going to be changes as the game is developing, but for the most part, this is what we should expect in terms of how the skill lines are going to look. This is only further bolstered by what Zenimax showed us at QuakeCon, by the way. So for those who have seen it, you'll have noticed that there is a little bit in the middle where they talk about the skill lines. That page that they show there, for example, is pretty much a mirror image of the leaked info, as it were. So everything is really pointing towards this information we've been going over to being absolutely correct, pretty much. It's obviously from a beta tester, and there's so many different claims for this information to be true. It's hard for us not to accept it as being the truth at this point. Now, beyond this kind of caveat there, we have to also remember that numbers don't really have any relevancy here. I'm going to try my best to keep the plain numbers, the little guys that are there to just be like damage numbers or that sort of thing, off the table, mainly because we don't have a context for them. We just don't know how a number such as 5, for example, how significant a 5 is in the scaling of Elder Scrolls Online, and how that works. So 5 may be insignificant a number just saying it, but it could wind up being that it's actually a very strong number in just the way that Elder Scrolls Online works. Now obviously that's probably not the case, honestly. That's just not going to be how it works, but we have to keep in mind that the numbers are not relevant here. Now on the other hand, percentages will be mentioned throughout this, mainly because percentages do allow us to understand a little bit better how a skill might be used and how potent the skill could be when used. So unlike a 5, where it could turn out to be small or big or intermittent, we don't really know where that stands because it's just a plain number. We don't have anything to compare it to. A percentage is pretty obvious what we're going to get. If something says it's going to do 75% of such and such, we have a good idea what it's going to do. So prepare yourselves for all of that goodness, but again, keep a lot of salt on your tongue for the numbers that may slip into this. But let's get out of the boring stuff, right? We're done with the boring shit. Let's get to what we all came here for, and that is the actual skill lines. So going into the armors, there's a couple things that need to be said right off, right? The skill lines for the armors work a little bit differently for two main reasons, really. One, there's not a whole list of actives to accompany a whole list of passives like there have been in the previous talked about skill lines. Instead, only one active ability comes per armor skill line. Now, in addition to this, the skill line gives us a number of passives which are both bolstered by how many of an item you have in that armor type you have equipped, right? But then in addition to this kind of thing, there's also like a tier list kind of system going on, or tier piece system, where when you reach the 5 number, because you have 7 slots, when you get to 5, you're going to get like an extra passive bonus, as it were. Now, the actives thing, we don't really know how exactly you're going to get them, and it looks to be that it's kind of changed throughout the lifetime of the beta, with it originally being as long as you had 1 to 3 pieces or something like that equipped, you could use the active ability. And then it became something more like if you have all of the pieces in that armor type slotted, for all 7 slots you've got the ability. But it seems to be that it's come back around to once you get the 5+ pieces, which gives you the extra passive ability, odds are it is what also gives you the active. So if you're using the majority of your armor in that type, you're also going to be able to use the armor's active ability. That really seems to be how it's going to work. But let's get into the actual ability, so maybe you guys can get some context as to what I'm talking about. So we're going to start with light armors. The active ability that light armor provides is called Annulment, which is just going to be an instant cast for a little bit of magicka, and it's going to provide a 50% damage reduction, or absorb rather, from spell attacks up to a maximum of such and such damage. It's pretty much like a mini bubble of sorts. If you've played MMOs, you kind of know what that means. And it's just going to be kind of a nice sort of defensive ability that you can use. If you're in light armor, odds are you're weak to attacks. Spell attacks usually are ranged as well, so this provides a little bit of a defensive ability to use to kind of counteract what you're fighting. Now, the passives start off with Evocation. This is going to reduce magicka cost of spells by about 3% per piece of light armor equipped. Then you have Recovery. This is going to increase magicka regeneration by about 4% per piece of light armor equipped. Your Spelled Warding is the next passive, and that's going to increase spell resistance by a small number per piece of light armor equipped. You have Prodigy, and this is where it gets kind of interesting here. This is going to be when you have 5 or more pieces of light armor equipped, you have a 10% chance for spells to cause critical damage. So it's just going to be a critical strike increase by about 10% when you have full light armor equipped. And then you finally have Concentration, which is the last passive, and this is going to increase spell damage by 1% per piece of light armor equipped. Now, those last two are obviously the most potent ones, but that's why they're at the end there. And like I said, it seems to be this tier listy kind of thing going on, or this tier system, where depending on how many pieces you have, the stronger you're able to get in that role. But the thing is also, because we have 7 slots, the idea is that you can actually offset this with some hybrid stuff without even having to commit. You can get all of the passives from light armor and still use medium for 2 slots, for example, or heavy for 2 slots. Now, the thing that I liked was that they actually put Concentration as your last passive, and the thing that I was liking about this is that because it's by a piece-by-piece nature, so you can actually just pick and choose how many you want to do. If you're willing to sacrifice the 5 or more piece passive, which is going to give you extra critical strike chance, which is actually a very nice one for that, I have to admit, because what happens is when you get past, there's going to be, in MMOs, if you're not into it very much, let me just tell you really quickly, in MMOs, there's always like this threshold, right, when you're trying to figure out the best way to do your DPS. You figure out the algorithms based on your rotations of sorts or your skill priority, and then you run through them, and depending on your stat allocation, it changes what you're able to do. And a lot of times it comes down to like the critical chance, and it comes down to like the ability cast times is a good one, or in a game unlike ESO, because this doesn't have this, cooldown reduction and things like that. These are very powerful sort of stats that you get on your gear, and depending on what you're playing, it changes the way that you do your rotation. Now, the way that I look at this is, when you start out, odds are, if you're going to go mage, right, if you're going to play a sorcerer or a magic casting kind of character, you're going to run all the way down and get 5 pieces. Odds are, right when the game launches, 10% to spell crit chance is going to be huge, right? But as armor becomes more easily gotten from the end game, or the longer that you play, odds are that you can probably change this out to something else, because crit chance for your spells is probably going to be more inherent on your gear. So then you can hybrid a little bit more as you get towards the end game, and you can actually pick and choose how you want to mix and match the armors, which I think is really cool. And I guess I should have waited till the end to talk about this, but I feel like it's a good one here, because this 5+ pieces passive that comes with Prodigy is really potent. But it goes to show that Zenimax is really thinking, well, this is how we want it to work. So there's definitely incentive to go for 5 or more pieces, right? That's really strong, more than likely at the beginning of the game. It also has these stacking percentage buffs on Evocation, Recovery, and Spell Warding. Those are all really strong. The Magicka regeneration and the lowered Magicka cost on recovery and evocation are really strong, right? So stacking them already has incentive, but there's also incentive out of that to hybrid, to get maybe a different play style. So that's really cool. That's really what they're going for with the armors in this game. And I think that they've done it very well so far. But let's move on to the medium armors, and we'll kind of discuss how maybe you can hybrid a little bit more towards the end here, right? So medium armor has the active ability Evasion, which is going to have a small stamina cost, and it's just going to allow a 30% dodge chance increase for about 20 seconds or so. Now, this is, again, a defensive kind of ability, and that seems to be the case with all three armor types, to be honest. That's really what they're going for. The incentive for the active ability is that you have protection, or it bolsters your ability to stay alive, which they've said is kind of going to be an extra importance in Elder Scrolls Online, unlike other MMOs, whereas you're usually relying completely on the healer, right? But the healing style they have in Elder Scrolls Online, which is mostly AoE and smart heals, which is not nearly as reliable as a sort of whack-a-mole healing style. It's boring. Whack-a-mole is totally boring, but it's obviously the more reliable because you have a person 100% in control of where the single target spells are going, right? So this is obviously what they're going for. They want you to kind of feel like you are in control of your own fate to a point, and then the healers are going to fill in the gaps, right? That's why healers kind of have a more active role in the game instead of just sort of this sit back and click the names that have the lowered health. So that's really cool to see throughout the armors. Now let's move on to the passive, shall we? The first one is Improved Sneak. This is going to decrease the area where you can be detected by about 5% per equipped piece of medium armor. This is also going to decrease the time to become hidden by about 5% per piece equipped. Now, this is interesting because I didn't think there was like a timer or a cast time kind of thing going on with the time it takes to actually achieve the sneak posture, as it were. So this is pretty cool. It's actually going to make it so you have, but I assume by the time you have 5 or 7 pieces, you can essentially just insta-sneak, as it were, which is pretty cool. Now, the next one is called Windwalker. This is going to increase stamina regeneration by about 4% per medium armor piece equipped. Athletics. This is going to increase sprint move speed by about 3% per piece equipped. We have Dexterity. With a full set of medium armor, 5+ pieces, you're going to reduce the duration of incoming snares by about 25%. And then finally we have Acrobatics. This is going to decrease the stamina cost of roll dodge by 4% per medium armor piece equipped. Now this is a cool one. I like medium armor because it really plays to my love of having the mobile fighter. There's quite a bit of that here. I'm not really a fan of the sneak thing, but the stamina regeneration for your medium armor pieces equipped, the sprint move speed is interesting, and the fact that you have the stamina cost reduction on the roll dodge by about 4% per piece of medium armor just makes the medium armor users fairly mobile compared to the light armor, as it were. Now, the thing that I found interesting also was that Dexterity is the 5-piece thing. Unlike the light armor, this one seems a little bit less sort of focused, right? So, whereas Prodigy, it seems to be like everyone can use this, and there's going to be uses for it in all settings. Dexterity, on the other hand, is very focused towards what I would say like more of a PvP thing, unless CCs from enemy mobs, from enemy NPCs is actually a threat. Until I play it, I can't tell you one way or the other. So we'll see how well that comes into play. The thing is, I wonder if they put it that way because they wanted to give this to the mobile fighter, and it would also allow the PvP kind of player to have this reduce in snare duration so that they are mobile. So it fits with the theme of it. But considering the fact that this skill line kind of gels very well, that if you're in all of those pieces, you're going to be moving around a lot, I figured they just decided to put the snare reduction in the medium skill line, because that way they can kind of balance it out, whereas the light armor skill line was all about spells. Like, it was very, this is about spellcasting, right? This one seems to be more about mobility and sneak, and it's got the PvP stuff. So not as focused as the light armor one, but you know what, that's pretty cool actually. Now finally, we move on to the heavy armors. The active ability for heavy armor is called Immovable. This is going to reduce all damage taken by about 20% for a couple seconds. This is also going to make you immune to knockback and disabling effects for the duration. Now, of all of the skills that are active on this on the armor skill lines, I feel like this one's the most potent for sure. Like, this is going to be one of those that makes people go for the heavy armor tank. And I suppose you could do the same, could be said, for evasion on medium. So if you wanted to go for the evasion tank thing, I guess you could do that as well. So I suppose it's not quite as strong, but I still feel like the Immovable seems like the most tank thematic. It definitely seems like the one that people will more than likely go to until we figure out some like crazy hybrid builds and stuff. Now the passives start out with bracing. This is going to reduce the cost of bracing by 3% per piece of heavy armor equipped. Now, I'm not quite sure what they mean by bracing. This is the first time I've actually heard of this term, as if it's like a game thing. I'm having to think it's probably block, to be honest. It seems like that's the obvious correlation here. So I'm assuming that's what they mean by bracing, is that there's a lowered cost to blocking. Because you can block with all weapon types. It's not just a tank thing. You can block with all your weapons, and it's encouraged that you do so. Now the next one is called Juggernaut. This is going to increase the power with melee weapons by 1% per piece of heavy armor equipped. We've got Rapid Mending. This is going to increase healing received by 1% per piece of heavy armor equipped. Then you have Resolve, which is the 5+ piece tier bonus there. This is going to reduce all damage taken by 4%. And then you have Constitution, which is going to increase health regeneration by 3% per piece of heavy armor equipped. Now, I suppose this plays pretty well to what you would expect heavy armor to do. It really just makes you really hard to kill. The tier bonus on this is really strong, actually. 4% maybe doesn't sound like a lot, but in MMO terms, anything over like 1% is hardcore for sure. Like, every percent counts when it comes to the theory crafting and the optimization of how you play. So 4% bonus to all damage taken, that reduction is really potent. That combined with the Immovable and the bracing and just all of the damage reduction going on here, plus the health regen on Constitution, is pretty cool. But the one that I really liked was Juggernaut, actually. This makes it so that you can actually go for a heavy armored, like two-handed weapon swinging badass if you really wanted to. And the fact is, if you have 5 or even 7 pieces, that's 7% damage. So there is definitely a potential for this heavy armor wielding DPS guy. There's definitely potential for that. So I'm glad that they added that in there. That's pretty damn cool. So then what do I think overall? Well, looking through all of these, I think that they've done a really good job, as I said when going over the light armor. I think that they balance these in just the right way, so that there's incentive to do either the full-on, very focused, I wear 7 pieces of light armor, I wear 7 pieces of medium, or I wear 7 pieces of heavy. They've done a really good job of making it so that you can do the opposite, though, and hybrid really heavily, so that you can really, if you want to, theory craft the numbers. And this is going to make theory crafters lose their mind, I guarantee it. Because the fact is, just think of it this way. I don't know if anyone's played, I believe it was Wrath of the Lich King, I'm pretty sure, in WoW. There was a time in WoW where you could actually get armor pieces from a lower armor tier. So for example, if you wore heavy armor, you could equip medium and light armor. And sometimes the medium armor, or the leather as it were in WoW, was actually the best DPS increase, or so on and so forth. So you would have people stealing the lower tiered armor in terms of what provided the most armor benefit in terms of health or whatever. So in this, instead of removing that fact like WoW did, they're fully embracing this idea of hybrid armor types. So you could go for heavy armor to the point that you realize this percentage number gain in my attacks for melee from Juggernaut, if I use this in combination with like 3 of the medium so that I have the stamina regen to keep up that damage for this amount of time. The number of attacks offsets the percentage buff that I would have gotten if I went full heavy. And then, you know what, maybe if I sprinkle in some armor as well, I can use these class skills, which will bolster my damage overall. The fact is that this is just really well done, and already, I mean, I haven't played the game to any real degree, honestly, and the ideas that go through my head when I think about the skill lines, and then I think about the armor is like in another realm of ridiculous theory crafting, to be honest. And this game overall, when you look at it, is just going to blow some theory crafters' minds out of their like ears or something. I imagine someone's looking at this going, how in the nuts am I going to find out the best algorithm and the best rotation and all of this stuff with all of these different combinations? It's absolutely crazy. I mean, the MMO community is definitely going to do it. Don't get me wrong. I have faith in their ability to crunch numbers to the nth degree. Don't you worry. They are going to do it. But the fact is, Zenimax has done really well to provide tons and tons of options, so everyone's going to be happy here, I think. I really think if you want to play the focused route and go all armor pieces have to be the same, I will not deviate, you're going to be happy. There's some nice bonuses to doing so. But on the other side, like as I said, you can hybrid as much as you want as well, and potentially even get a better experience in terms of like the hardcore have to get the most out of your character playstyle stuff. So it's going to work out for everyone involved, really. But yeah, that'll do it for me, guys. Kind of rambled on a little bit longer than I was hoping to, but that's alright, that's kind of my style. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of the armor skill lines down in the comments below. Let me know what you're planning on doing. I'll be upfront and say that I am pretty on the fence on how I want to do this. I'm looking to be probably a mix of medium and light armors because I really like that mobile style, but I'm looking at maybe playing a sorcerer at the moment, so maybe I'll play a mobile sorcerer of sorts. We'll have to see as time goes on and if I can actually play the damn thing. Please, Zenimax, let me play your game. I really want to. Yeah, that's really what I'm gonna go for. Tell me what you guys want to add down in the comments below, and yeah, if you like this in the slightest, really found this informative, or just like to listen to me ramble because I have a nice voice or something, leave a comment down below on anything Elder Scrolls Online, MMO related, or gaming. Please hit that thumbs up and the subscribe buttons for more MMO goodness from me. And yeah, that'll do it, guys. I will see you on the next one.